If you're over 60 and you want to stay strong, sharp, and independent, you're exactly where you need to be. Welcome to Senior Wellness Explained. I'm Dr. CFAS, and every video on this channel is made with one person in mind, you. Now, have you ever stopped to wonder why, despite eating clean, taking your medications, doing everything your doctor told you, your heart still feels tired? Your ankles still swell. You're short of breath climbing one flight of stairs. Your energy crashes every afternoon. You cut out fried food, switched to salads, added the superfoods, the ones on every eat this after 60 list you could find. Bananas for your heart, spinach for your blood, grapefruit to stay lean. You did everything right. And yet, something is still quietly going wrong inside your chest. Here's what nobody is telling you. The problem may not be what you're avoiding. It may be exactly what you're eating, with complete confidence, every single day. A cardiologist reviewing the latest clinical research has identified 6 foods sitting on seniors' plates right now. Foods that carry the official superfood badge of honor. That are, for the body over 60, specifically, silently working against the very organ you're trying to protect. Not because these foods are poison, but because after 60, your heart, your kidneys, your blood chemistry operate by an entirely different set of rules. And almost nobody is talking about it. Today, we change that. All 6, what they are, exactly how they weaken the aging heart, and what to do instead. Stay until the end. Because number 5 is one of the most widely consumed condiments in the world, and the damage it does to a heart over 60 can happen in a single meal. If you've ever trusted a healthy label and still felt worse, type 1 in the comments right now. You are not imagining it. And you are not alone. Let's dive in. Bananas. Every senior health article recommends them. Every doctor has mentioned them. You've probably been eating one a day for years, maybe 2, because you were told potassium is good for your heart, good for your blood pressure, good for your muscles. And they were right. For a younger body, they absolutely were. But here is what changes after 60. Your kidneys filter excess potassium out of your bloodstream. In a healthy body, they keep potassium locked within a very precise range, 3.5 to 5.0 millimoles per liter. That balance is non-negotiable. Because potassium is what governs your heart's electrical system. Every single heartbeat is coordinated by that number staying stable. After 60, something happens that most people are never told about. The filtering units in your kidneys, called nephrons, decline progressively with age. Your filtration rate drops. And that tight potassium regulation your body used to handle automatically, it becomes increasingly fragile. One medium banana contains 422 milligrams of potassium. That number meant very little at 40. But in an aging kidney that can no longer clear potassium efficiently, that same banana, eaten daily, eaten confidently, eaten because you believe it's protecting your heart, can quietly push your blood potassium into a danger zone called hyperkalemia. Here's what hyperkalemia does to your heart. When potassium rises too high outside your heart cells, the resting electrical charge of those cells shifts toward the firing threshold. The heart becomes hyperexcitable, then unstable. Doctors see it first on an ECG, peak T waves, a widening QRS complex. Left unchecked, it can progress to ventricular fibrillation, a fatal arrhythmia, not from a blocked artery, from a banana. But there's one more layer. And this is what makes it truly dangerous for the over 60 population specifically. Millions of seniors are on medications that already reduce the kidney's ability to excrete potassium. ACE inhibitors like ramipril, ARBs like losartan, spironolactone for fluid retention. These are among the most commonly prescribed heart medications in the world, and every single one of them retains potassium in the body as part of how they work. So if you're on any of these medications and eating bananas daily because you believe you're strengthening your heart, you may be compounding a slow-motion electrical risk your doctor has never directly warned you about. This is not a reason to panic. It is a reason to have a conversation with your doctor about your potassium levels and your medication list before your next banana. Now, if a fruit as universally trusted as a banana can quietly destabilize your heart's electrical system, wait until you hear what the next superfood is doing to your blood. Spinach. Dark, leafy, loaded with iron, fiber, and antioxidants. Popeye made it famous. Every nutritionist on the planet recommends it. You've been adding it to your smoothies, your salads, your omelets, doing exactly what the mainstream health world told you to do. But for a significant portion of seniors over 60, spinach is not a superfood. It is a pharmacological time bomb sitting quietly in your refrigerator. Here's why. Spinach is one of the single densest sources of vitamin K1 found in any common food. For most people, completely fine. Vitamin K plays an essential role in bone health and blood clotting. No problem. Until you are one of the millions of seniors prescribed warfarin, sold as Coumadin, for atrial fibrillation, a mechanical heart valve, a history of blood clots, or stroke prevention. Because warfarin does one very specific thing. It blocks the enzyme your liver uses to recycle vitamin K. That recycling process is what activates the clotting factors in your blood. When warfarin interrupts it, your blood takes longer to clot. That is the entire therapeutic point. It is keeping a dangerous clot from forming in your heart or traveling to your brain. Now, when you eat a large serving of spinach, you flood your liver with vitamin K1. That flood can overpower the warfarin. It outcompetes the medication for the very enzyme warfarin was blocking. The result? Your blood's clotting ability surges back. Your stroke protection drops with it. The clot that medication was preventing becomes possible again. Doctors have seen this. Patients perfectly stable on warfarin for years, suddenly experiencing a clotting event after a week of daily green smoothies. Ischemic strokes, heart attacks, traced back not to a missed dose, but to a new health habit adopted with complete sincerity. And here is the cruelest part. The danger runs in both directions. If a senior eats spinach regularly, and their warfarin dose has been carefully calibrated around that habit, and they suddenly stop eating it, the medication becomes too strong. The INR climbs. The blood becomes dangerously thin. Now the risk flips to hemorrhagic stroke, bleeding in the brain, or uncontrolled internal bleeding. The danger is not the spinach itself. The danger is the inconsistency, eating it heavily one week, skipping it the next. That unpredictability is what destabilizes a carefully managed anticoagulation regimen. And if that were not enough, spinach carries the same high potassium load we just discussed with bananas. That makes it a dual threat for any senior managing both anticoagulation and kidney function simultaneously, which, in the over 60 population, is far more common than most people realize. So what do you do? If you're on warfarin, the answer is not elimination. It is consistency. Work with your doctor to establish a stable, fixed portion of leafy greens per week so your medication can be calibrated around your actual diet. Never change your spinach intake dramatically without telling your care team first. Now, bananas can disrupt your heart's electrical system. Spinach can undermine the very medication keeping you alive. But superfood number 3 doesn't just interact with 1 or 2 medications. It interacts with nearly half of all cardiovascular drugs ever prescribed. Bright, tangy, low in calories, high in vitamin C. For decades, the centerpiece of every weight loss plan, every eat clean after 60 breakfast plate, every senior's health magazine spread on heart protective foods. If you've been starting your mornings with a glass of grapefruit juice alongside your medications, believing you're doing something good for your body, what you're about to hear may be the most important 60 seconds of health information you receive this year. Because grapefruit is not just a food. For a body over 60 on cardiovascular medication, grapefruit is a drug amplifier. The mechanism behind it is so precise, so well documented in clinical medicine, that many cardiologists consider it the single most dangerous food-drug interaction in existence. Here is exactly what happens. Inside the wall of your small intestine and your liver lives an enzyme called CYP3A4. This is your body's pharmaceutical processing system. Its job is to break down medications as they enter your bloodstream, metabolizing them, neutralizing the excess, ensuring only a safe, therapeutic amount reaches your heart and organs. CYP3A4 processes nearly half of all common medications. And after 60, your liver's enzyme activity already naturally declines, meaning your body is already slower at clearing drugs than it was at 40. Now enter grapefruit. Grapefruit contains natural compounds called furanocoumarins. And furanocoumarins do something extraordinary and extraordinarily dangerous. They do not merely slow CYP3A4 down. They permanently destroy the enzyme molecules they bind to. Irreversibly. Your body must synthesize entirely new enzyme molecules to replace them. a process that takes up to 72 hours. One glass of grapefruit juice in the morning doesn't just affect the medication you take at breakfast. It affects every dose you take for the next 3 days. Here's what that means in practice. If you're taking a statin, atorvastatin, simvastatin, levastatin, grapefruit can increase the concentration of that drug in your bloodstream by over 300%. Instead of a therapeutic dose, your muscles absorb the equivalent of 3 times your prescription. The result can be rhabdomyolysis, a catastrophic breakdown of muscle tissue that floods your kidneys with a protein called myoglobin, potentially causing acute kidney failure and placing severe secondary strain on your heart. If you're on a calcium channel blocker, nifedipine, felodipine, verapamil, for high blood pressure, grapefruit can drive blood pressure into dangerous collapse, dizziness, fainting, falls, and critically, reduced blood flow to the coronary arteries themselves. The medication meant to protect your heart begins starving it of the perfusion it needs. If you're on amiodarone for arrhythmia, grapefruit elevates drug concentration and prolongs its half-life, pushing into territory of toxic arrhythmias, thyroid toxicity, and pulmonary damage. The list continues. Rivaroxaban, certain anticoagulants, even medications prescribed for other conditions that cardiovascular patients commonly take alongside their heart drugs. And because the enzyme inhibition lasts up to 72 hours, separating your grapefruit from your pill by a few hours changes nothing. The enzyme is already gone. For seniors over 60, where taking multiple medications simultaneously is the rule rather than the exception, this is not a minor dietary footnote. Cardiologists and pharmacists are unambiguous. For patients on affected cardiovascular medications, the only genuinely safe approach is complete avoidance of grapefruit and grapefruit juice entirely. Not less of it. Not timed differently. Gone. Now, bananas quietly destabilize your heart's electrical system. Spinach can undermine your stroke protection. Grapefruit can turn your medication into an accidental overdose. But superfood number 4 doesn't require any medication interaction at all to damage your heart. It does it directly, in a single meal, and it's hiding in one of the most popular cuisines in the world. Soy sauce. Now you may be thinking, soy sauce is not a superfood. And you'd be right. Not in the traditional sense. But here's why it made this list. Soy products, tofu, miso, edamame, have been aggressively marketed to seniors as heart-healthy, plant-based, cholesterol-free alternatives to animal protein. The soy is good for your heart message has been so thoroughly absorbed into mainstream health culture that millions of seniors over 60 have built their diets around soy-based foods, including the condiment that accompanies almost every soy-forward meal on the planet. And that condiment, that innocent tablespoon you pour without thinking, may be doing more damage to your aging heart in a single sitting than a week's worth of poor food choices. Here's the number you need to know. 1 single tablespoon of traditional soy sauce contains between 900 and 1,200 milligrams of sodium. Let that land for a moment. The American Heart Association recommends seniors with cardiovascular conditions consume no more than 1,500 milligrams of sodium per day. 1 tablespoon of soy sauce at dinner brings you to 80% of that entire daily limit before you've touched anything else on your plate. The soup, the bread, the processed protein, the dressing, all of it stacks on top. And for the aging heart, sodium is not simply a blood pressure number on a chart. It is a physical force that directly assaults the structure and function of a heart that is already working harder than it should. Here is the mechanism. Sodium is an osmotic solute. When excess sodium enters your bloodstream, it pulls water from surrounding tissues into your blood vessels, dramatically increasing the volume of fluid your heart must now pump. A young, strong heart compensates. It stretches, adapts, recovers. The aging heart cannot, particularly one with diastolic dysfunction, reduced ejection fraction, or early-stage heart failure. It reaches what cardiologists describe using Starling's law, a point where additional fluid volume no longer increases output. It simply overwhelms the pump. The excess fluid has nowhere to go. It backs up, forces its way out of blood vessels and into surrounding tissue, into your ankles and legs, the swelling you may have written off as just getting older, into your abdomen, and most dangerously, into your lungs. Pulmonary edema, fluid in the lungs, acute shortness of breath at rest, oxygen saturation dropping. the heart working frantically against a system that is flooding from the inside. Cardiologists have documented patients going from a stable evening to an emergency room admission overnight, triggered not by a cardiac event in the traditional sense, but by a single high-sodium meal. 1 sushi dinner. 2 to 3 pounds of fluid retained by morning. Emergency diuretic treatment required. And there is a second weapon sodium wields against the senior heart. Aging arteries have lost their elasticity. The arterial walls have stiffened, a process called arteriosclerosis, and they can no longer expand and absorb sudden increases in blood volume the way younger vessels can. So when sodium forces extra fluid into a circulatory system contained by stiff, inflexible pipes, blood pressure does not rise gradually. It spikes. Sharply. Suddenly. With force. That spike is not just a number. It is mechanical pressure applied to arterial walls that may already contain vulnerable plaques, unstable deposits of fat and calcium sitting at fragile points in your coronary and cerebral arteries. A sudden pressure surge is precisely the kind of stress that can rupture one of those plaques. A ruptured plaque is a heart attack, or a stroke, from 1 tablespoon, poured confidently, because soy is healthy. The good news, this risk is among the most actionable on this list. You do not need to abandon flavor. Raw garlic, turmeric with black pepper, ginger, these are what cardiologists now call the real heart-healthy heroes of the spice rack. Garlic alone has been shown in clinical research to reduce total cholesterol by up to 15%. Hibiscus tea has demonstrated blood pressure reductions comparable to some medications by naturally inhibiting the same ACE enzyme that prescription drugs target. Flavor without the flood. Now 4 superfoods down. 2 remain. And number 5 is in a completely different category, because it doesn't work through your diet at all. It works by hijacking your hormones. And it's hiding in a place almost nobody would ever think to look. Black licorice. Before you move on thinking this one doesn't apply to you, stay with me for the next 2 minutes. Because this is the entry on this list that has genuinely shocked cardiologists. The one that has sent otherwise healthy men and women in their 60s directly into cardiac arrest. The one the FDA felt compelled to issue a formal public warning about. And the one most likely sitting in your home right now, not as candy, but disguised as something you consider entirely wholesome. We'll come back to that in a moment. First, the science. Because what black licorice does to the body over 60 is not a simple food reaction. It is a full hormonal hijacking. And once you understand the mechanism, you will never look at a herbal tea label the same way again. The licorice plant, Glycyrrhiza glabra, contains a naturally occurring compound called glycyrrhizin, responsible for licorice's distinctive sweet flavor. Also one of the most potent endocrine disruptors found in any commonly consumed food or supplement. Here is exactly what it does inside your body. Your kidneys contain an enzyme called 11-beta-hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase type 2, 11-beta-HSD2. This enzyme performs one critical protective function. It converts active cortisol, your stress hormone, into its inactive form, specifically within kidney tissue. This conversion exists to prevent cortisol from flooding the kidney's mineralocorticoid receptors, the receptors normally reserved for aldosterone, the hormone that regulates sodium and potassium balance. Glycyrrhizin inhibits that enzyme completely. When 11-beta-HSD2 is blocked, cortisol builds up unchecked in the kidney and begins binding to those mineralocorticoid receptors it was never supposed to reach. And when cortisol activates those receptors, it triggers the kidney's most primitive survival response. The kidney begins aggressively retaining sodium and water, and simultaneously, it begins dumping potassium. Fast. This condition has a clinical name, pseudohyperaldosteronism. Your body behaves as though aldosterone levels are dangerously high, triggering every downstream consequence of that hormonal state. But the aldosterone itself is completely normal. The culprit is cortisol, running unchecked because a candy compound switched off the enzyme meant to contain it. For a heart over 60, already navigating stiff arteries, reduced renal clearance, and a fragile electrical system, this combination is catastrophic. The sodium and water retention drives blood pressure into dangerous elevations. Not gradually, rapidly, severely, while simultaneously, the potassium being aggressively excreted depletes serum levels into a condition called hypokalemia. And low potassium, as we established with bananas, destabilizes the heart's electrical system from the opposite direction. Hyperkalemia, too much potassium, makes the heart hyperexcitable. Hypokalemia, too little potassium, makes it prone to dangerous, erratic rhythms. Tachycardia, ventricular arrhythmia, sudden cardiac arrest. The FDA has stated formally that for individuals aged 40 and over, consuming just 2 ounces of black licorice daily for 2 weeks is sufficient to trigger an irregular heart rhythm severe enough to require hospitalization. Case studies in peer-reviewed medical journals have documented men in their 60s going into sudden cardiac arrest traced directly to licorice consumption. One documented case, reported in the New England Journal of Medicine, involved a man who died after weeks of daily licorice candy consumption. His cause of death, severe hypokalemia-induced cardiac arrest. He was not sick before he started eating it. Now, here is the part that makes this genuinely alarming for seniors who would never touch a bag of licorice candy. Glycyrrhizin is not confined to the sweet aisle. Licorice root is one of the most widely used ingredients in the herbal supplement and natural wellness industry. It is found in throat lozenges marketed for soothing relief, in digestive health teas sold specifically to seniors for bloating and gut comfort, in adrenal support supplements, in herbal blends positioned as stress relief formulas, in traditional medicine preparations used across African, Asian, and European cultures for generations. The label may not say licorice. It may say glycyrrhiza, licorice root extract, or simply list it as a botanical ingredient buried in a proprietary blend. And because the hormonal effects of glycyrrhizin are cumulative, building over days and weeks of consistent intake, a senior drinking 2 cups of a licorice-containing herbal tea every evening may be slowly and silently driving their blood pressure upward and their potassium downward, with no awareness that anything they're consuming could be responsible. This is not a remote or theoretical risk. The British Heart Foundation, the American Heart Association, and the FDA have all issued direct guidance on this compound. The Cleveland Clinic has described it as capable of making your heart, quite literally, skip a beat. Check your supplements. Check your teas. Turn the box over and read the botanical ingredients list before your next cup. Now, 5 superfoods down. 1 remains. And number 6 surprises people most, because its danger is not chemical, not hormonal, and not pharmacological. It is structural. And for any senior with a history of swallowing difficulty, reflux, or digestive sensitivity, it may be the most immediately dangerous item on this entire list. Chia seeds, the darling of the modern wellness world. Omega-3 fatty acids, complete protein, more fiber than almost any food on the planet. Sprinkled into smoothies, stirred into yogurt, mixed into overnight oats. Every health influencer, every nutritionist, every Age Gracefully podcast has recommended them at some point in the last decade. And for a younger body with a strong, fully functional digestive tract, they are genuinely impressive nutritionally. But for the body over 60, chia seeds carry a risk that has nothing to do with chemistry, nothing to do with hormones, nothing to do with your medication list. The danger is physical, mechanical, and it can escalate from a minor discomfort to a cardiac emergency faster than almost anything else on this list. Here's why. Chia seeds are powerfully hydrophilic, meaning they are attracted to water. When exposed to liquid, they don't simply absorb it. They expand dramatically, absorbing up to 27 times their own weight in water, forming a thick, dense, gelatinous mass in the process. In a bowl of overnight oats, that property is appealing. A thick, pudding-like texture that keeps you full for hours. Inside a compromised esophagus, that same property becomes a medical emergency. Here is what happens in the aging digestive system that most seniors are never told. After 60, the esophagus undergoes age-related changes, a condition clinicians call presbyesophagus. The coordinated muscular contractions that move food smoothly from your throat to your stomach become less efficient, less powerful, less precisely timed. Conditions that caused only minor discomfort in younger years, a hiatal hernia, a small structural pouch called a Zinker's diverticulum, mild reflux-related narrowing, become significantly more relevant to swallowing safety. Many seniors have some degree of dysphagia, difficulty swallowing, without ever receiving a formal diagnosis. They've simply adapted, eating more slowly, avoiding certain textures, writing off occasional sticking sensations as normal aging. Now take dry chia seeds, consumed the way millions of seniors consume them, stirred quickly into a drink or sprinkled over food, followed by a swallow of liquid. The seeds enter the esophagus. The liquid follows. And in the warm, moist environment of the esophageal lining, the seeds begin their extraordinary expansion, 27 times their weight in water. In seconds, in a passage that in an aging body may already be narrowed, weakened, or structurally irregular. The result can be an esophageal impaction, not a partial discomfort, a complete obstruction requiring emergency medical intervention to clear. Cases of this have been documented in medical literature. Healthy seniors who took their morning chia seeds the way they had for months and found themselves unable to swallow, unable to breathe comfortably, in acute distress within minutes. But here is where this becomes a heart story, and not just a digestive one. The moment the body registers an esophageal obstruction, the sympathetic nervous system fires. Fight or flight activates in full. Adrenaline surges. Cortisol spikes. Heart rate accelerates. Blood pressure climbs sharply and suddenly. For a senior with underlying coronary artery disease, narrowed arteries already operating at reduced capacity, this sympathetic storm is precisely the kind of acute physiological stress that can trigger a myocardial infarction. The heart, suddenly demanded to work dramatically harder, receives less oxygen through arteries that were already compromised. A heart attack, caused by a swallowing emergency, caused by a superfood consumed every morning in complete confidence. And there is one more layer. The extraordinary fiber content of chia seeds, celebrated as one of their greatest benefits, can physically interfere with the absorption of critical medications when consumed at the same time. The dense gelatinous mass they form in the digestive tract can bind to drug molecules and carry them through the system before they can be properly absorbed. For a senior whose heart medications require consistent blood levels to be effective, this is not a minor inconvenience. It is a direct compromise of their pharmacological protection. The clinical guidance is clear and actionable. Chia seeds do not need to be eliminated from the senior diet, but they must never, under any circumstances, be consumed dry or in a rapidly consumed liquid. They must be fully prehydrated first, soaked in water, milk, or another liquid for a minimum of 15 to 20 minutes until they have already formed their gel, before they ever enter your mouth. The expansion has already occurred outside your body. The mechanical risk is neutralized. Preparation is the difference between a beneficial food and an emergency room visit. Now, 6 superfoods. 6 hidden mechanisms. 6 ways the foods you trusted most have been quietly working against the very organ you've been trying to protect. But we are not finished. Because knowing what to remove is only half of the equation. The other half, the part that will actually transform your heart health after 60, is knowing what to put in its place. And that is exactly where we are going next. So here's where we are. 6 foods. 6 hidden mechanisms. Each one carrying a superfood reputation built for a younger body. And each one quietly working against the aging heart in ways that mainstream health advice has consistently failed to warn you about. Bananas, silently pushing potassium levels toward the electrical danger zone, especially on common heart medications. Spinach, undermining anticoagulation therapy with every inconsistent serving, in both directions. Grapefruit, permanently destroying the enzyme your liver needs to safely process nearly half of all cardiovascular drugs. Soy sauce, flooding an aging circulatory system with sodium that's stiff, inflexible arteries simply cannot absorb without consequence. Black licorice, hijacking your hormonal system to simultaneously spike your blood pressure and strip your heart of the potassium it needs to maintain a stable rhythm. And chia seeds, creating a mechanical and cardiovascular emergency risk that begins not in the heart, but in a single swallow. If this information has changed the way you see your plate, type 1 in the comments right now. You are part of a community of seniors who are done being misled by labels, done following advice that was never designed for the body they actually live in. Now, let's talk about what your heart actually needs. Because this is the part nobody makes videos about. Not the fear, the solution. The real heart heroes after 60. The goal after 60 is not finding the next miracle superfood to replace the last one. That cycle is precisely what got us here. The goal is building a dietary pattern that is consistent, personalized, and calibrated to the unique biological reality of the aging cardiovascular system. Clinical research and cardiologist consensus now point to several specific foods and habits that genuinely support the heart over 60 without the hidden risks. Raw garlic. Not a supplement. Not a capsule. Raw garlic, crushed or finely chopped, allowed to sit for 10 minutes before use to activate its key compounds. Clinical research has demonstrated garlic can reduce total cholesterol by up to 15%. It supports healthy blood pressure through nitric oxide pathways that relax and widen blood vessels. And unlike grapefruit, it does not interfere with the enzyme systems that process your medications. It works with your cardiovascular biology, not against it. Turmeric with black pepper. Turmeric's active compound, curcumin, is one of the most studied anti-inflammatory agents in nutritional science. Chronic low-grade inflammation is one of the primary drivers of atherosclerosis, the plaque buildup in arterial walls that leads to heart attacks and strokes. Black pepper increases curcumin absorption by up to 2,000%. Together, they form one of the most cost-effective, accessible anti-inflammatory combinations available to the senior heart. Hibiscus tea. This one consistently surprises people. Research has shown hibiscus tea can produce blood pressure reductions comparable to some antihypertensive medications by naturally inhibiting the same ACE enzyme that prescription ACE inhibitors target. For seniors managing mild to moderate hypertension, 2 cups daily, consumed consistently, represents meaningful, evidence-based cardiovascular support. No sodium, no drug interaction, no prescription required. Berries, particularly blueberries and cherries. Unlike high-fructose fruits that spike uric acid and drive inflammation in aging joints and vessels, berries offer a dense concentration of anthocyanins, plant pigments with documented antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effects on the vascular endothelium, the inner lining of your arteries. Research consistently shows regular berry consumption is associated with improved arterial flexibility, directly countering the stiffening process that makes the aging cardiovascular system so vulnerable to sodium, blood pressure surges, and plaque rupture. Avocado. The potassium conversation we had about bananas does not mean potassium itself is the enemy. Your heart absolutely needs potassium to function. The question is the source and the dose. Avocado provides a gentler, more gradual potassium delivery alongside heart-healthy monounsaturated fats, the same category of fats that form the foundation of the Mediterranean diet, the most extensively researched dietary pattern for cardiovascular longevity. Unlike bananas, the potassium in avocado comes packaged with fat that slows its absorption, reducing the risk of sharp serum spikes that challenge an aging kidney. Papaya and pears. For seniors who want the satisfaction of fruit without the high fructose load or the potassium concentration of tropical options, papaya and pears are what cardiologists increasingly call gentle fruits. Lower glycemic impact. High fiber content that supports digestive health and medication absorption, rather than interfering with it. Natural enzyme content in papaya that supports healthy circulation and reduces systemic inflammation. The 3 principles that change everything. Beyond specific foods, cardiologists and clinical nutritionists studying geriatric heart health have converged on 3 foundational principles that matter more than any individual ingredient. First, consistency over perfection. For seniors on warfarin, potassium-regulating medications, or any drug whose efficacy depends on stable blood levels, the most dangerous word in nutrition is inconsistency. Eating spinach heavily one week, avoiding it the next. Adding bananas for a month then stopping. Your medical team can calibrate your medications around almost any stable dietary pattern. What they cannot calibrate around is constant, unpredictable change. Choose your pattern. Stick to it. Tell your doctor what it is. Second, preparation transforms risk. The chia seed story taught us this most clearly. The same food can be safe or dangerous depending entirely on how it is prepared. Lightly blanching leafy greens reduces oxalate content and makes nutrients more bioavailable. Pre-soaking seeds eliminates mechanical expansion risk. Crushing garlic and waiting before cooking activates its cardiovascular compounds. Cooking is not just flavor. For the senior heart, it is medicine management. Third, know your numbers beyond cholesterol. Cholesterol alone is no longer a sufficient picture of cardiovascular risk after 60. Cardiologists are now strongly recommending that seniors ask their doctors about testing for lipoprotein A, written as Lp(a). This is a genetic marker, unaffected by diet or exercise, that can significantly elevate the risk of heart attack and stroke even when all standard cholesterol numbers look perfectly normal. Because lifestyle changes cannot alter Lp(a) levels, knowing this number can fundamentally change the preventive strategy your doctor recommends. It is a test many seniors have never been offered, and it may be the most important cardiovascular number you do not yet know. You came to this video because something was not adding up. You were eating well, following the advice, and your heart was still struggling in ways you could not fully explain. Now you know why. The superfood narrative was never built for the body you have after 60. It was built for a universal human that does not exist, one with the kidneys of a 30-year-old, the enzyme activity of an athlete, the arterial flexibility of someone who has never taken a medication in their life. You are not that person. Neither is anyone else watching this video. And that is not a weakness. That is simply the biological reality of a body that has been working for 6 decades, one that now requires a more precise, more personalized, and more honest conversation about what it actually needs. The seniors who protect their hearts after 60 are not the ones chasing the latest superfood trend. They are the ones who understand their own biology, who ask better questions, who read the label on the herbal tea, who soak their seeds before swallowing, who call their doctor before dramatically changing their diet, who refuse to be misled by a label ever again. You are not powerless when it comes to your health. No matter your age, no matter what you've been told, the research is clear that small changes still make a real difference. And I'll keep bringing you that research, made simple, right here on Senior Wellness Explained. If this video gave you something, a new question to ask your doctor, a habit to reconsider, a conversation to start with someone you love, share it with them right now. Because the person in your life who needs this information most is probably not searching for it. Subscribe so you never miss a video. And share this with someone you love who's over 60, because this kind of information should reach everyone. And remember this, your heart has been working every single second of every single day for your entire life. It deserves better information than it has been given. Now you have it.